Welcome to this new episode of the Women in Technology Spotlight. Today is a very special edition because we're doing a Where Are They Now episode with someone I've already talked to a while ago. With me today is Jacqueline Berger. I talked to her in June 2022, so it's about 1.5 years ago. At the time, you called yourself, Jacqueline, a data scientist in progress. It's 1.5 years later. Where are you now?
When we were talking last time, I was in the middle of my 3 years bachelor. In the meantime, I finished the bachelor and I got a job as a data scientist at Frequentis, where I work on, let's say, data projects related in the safety critical communication domain.
So when you say it like this, so 1.5 years ago, you said you were a data scientist in progress, and now you're a data scientist. It sounds like it was like easy running. I mean, so no obstacles, you just had a plan and you executed it. So was it like that? Was it easy? Because I do remember that we talked about how you were a bit worried that because you were much older than the other students and you were a mom already and you had all these responsibilities and you were a bit worried about how it will all turn out. So how did it go?
Yeah, so it was really far from easy. And I remember at that time I was looking desperately for an internship because the 5th semester is supposed to be an entire semester of hands-on practice. And I was getting tons of rejections, which was really, really disappointing and discouraging me. So I thought about a strategy, how I can make sure that people know me, because I have a story, I have some work experience, but it's so hard to put this on one A4, like one sheet of paper. So the idea was, what can I do to make me seen or to get visible so people will give me a chance for a job? And then I started to be more present on LinkedIn and just to keep talking about the story, because I think visibility is really important. And as you know, from the I Am Remarkable initiative, I was really happy that I could get a glimpse of that, because it really reflects my values. And as you know, I'm also a facilitator like you now. So I think it was not easy, but getting visibility on LinkedIn and visiting networks, like really networking in terms of going to meetups and talking to people, that made it easier for me to kind of get in contact with, let's say, my possible future employer. So that helped definitely.
Yeah. Let me circle back a bit, because maybe not everyone who's listening to us today has heard your first podcast. And so maybe we just quickly talk about, I mean, you already had a fully developed career when you decided to switch into IT, right? I mean, so it wasn't like you were this beginner who had no job experience, who had no experience. You were a drilling engineer and you had a successful career. And then you decided to switch careers because you became a mom and you realized that it wasn't sustainable being a drilling engineer.
Yes, that's
So it's
right.
interesting. Yeah, so it's interesting to see that even though you had all these work experience in a technical field, in the end, you still had issues finding an internship, right? And you touched on something so important. You touched on visibility and self-promotion. And I would like to dig into that a little bit. I think that's something a lot of women struggle with. And I have watched you for the last 1.5 years really brilliantly building those two pillars of your career. And I really want to discuss this with you because I think this is so helpful for women to understand. First thing I want to talk about is this. You mentioned I Am Remarkable. I'm pretty sure not everyone knows I Am Remarkable. Tell me a little bit what that is specifically and why you found that so useful.
So my first contact with this initiative was that someone posted on LinkedIn that there is this workshop, and it was just mentioning to talk about achievements. I had no idea what it was about, and I just joined it, and I really had no expectations about this workshop. I was there as a participant. And so what this workshop was about is that apparently in Google, it all started when they found out that women would not be so quick to accept their achievements. And they found it's not only women, it's in particularly minority groups.
Sorry, Can I ask you a question about that? What do you mean when you say women are not quick to accept their achievements?
Like if you would ask a group of women who thinks she has done something remarkable or something great lately, then very rarely women will raise their hands, because they think that whatever they have done in the past is just the normal job. They will not see it as something special, or they will not recognize it as an achievement as such. Where if you would ask that in a mixed group, you will see more male hands up than female hands. Let's put it this way.
So it's about recognizing that you did
Yeah.
something remarkable, I think,
Yeah.
right?
It needs to be seen as something worth highlighting or being remarkable.
And on top of accepting that everything you do might be not normal or standard, or you're doing something special, I feel from my point of view that it's also about, talking about the things you're good at, right?
The idea is really to take your time and think about what have you done that is remarkable. And in the beginning, it's a very hard task, because you probably think about one or two things and then that's it. But they keep forcing you to think about it. They keep asking you to think about it. And after giving it more time, really to dig into it, the next challenge would be to talk about it. So it is kind of taking one step after the other. So first you recognize it, and then you're talking about it in a group of people, and you will read out what you think you're remarkable of.
I understand that you are now also a facilitator, and I'm also a very big fan of I Am Remarkable workshops, because I feel that what many women don't see is that they might lag behind in their careers because they're less visible than men, usually in these male-dominated fields, because men are much better at recognizing their achievements and talking about them and getting recognition for that. So I think this is a very important tool to achieve more visibility. You said you realized that you weren't visible and you started working on these things, like going on LinkedIn and posting, for example, when you started your new job, even though it felt awkward. So let's talk a little bit about visibility and what it means to be visible, because I think that's something women often struggle with. Why is it so important to be visible?
I noticed by being more visible that I had the opportunity to inspire so many people to also try changing career or taking on that challenge or whatever. So being visible, even if it might feel like you're putting yourself on the stage, at the end of the day, you're putting a message on that stage. And this message is very powerful to inspire others. And that is very rewarding to see.
Of course, it impacts other women. Obviously, when they see someone they can relate to, it might inspire them to also try to switch careers into a field like ours. But why is that important to you?
At the end of the day, you're also helping other women to progress in their career, and you can be like a light tower to guide them. You can exchange knowledge, because by being seen, people can address you, people can ask you questions, and then you can build up, for example, a mentoring relationship, or simply, talk about day-to-day business in certain niche professions where they don't have other women to exchange their personal experiences.
So what changed for you when you became more visible?
Oh, so many people started to talk to me, and so many people were asking questions. And at the same time, I started to feel my career progress to a different level, because whenever people were approaching me that I haven't had the chance to talk before, regardless of their management level, I felt there was lots of respect, and they were talking to me at an equal level. So I think this was really not the case before all of this.
As I said, I've been watching you for 1.5 years progress through your career. And what I notice is that it's not just about visibility. I think what I see in you is that you take on responsibility for others. And you did that at the university already, and you are doing it now. And that brings me to the whole networking part of your story. I mean, you said you started attending women's network meetups and events and things like that. And that is obviously an advice we give a lot of women: build a network, get to know people. But I think there is an aspect there that most people don't realize, and that is what you're doing. You're giving back to those networks. Talk a little bit about all these little things you are doing now in those networks. For example, role model events. I think you're a role model for different institutions. Maybe you can tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that.
I have networks that have different target groups, and one of them is addressing particularly younger women in like their age 40 to 18, which is at LEA. So that's an empowerment initiative, which is called Let's Empower Austria, where these initiatives would go to schools and take a role model with them to talk about the job and the challenges so that the women can have an idea about how does this job look like, what are the tasks, what are the potential struggles. And so you really have direct contact there to young students, and they can ask literally questions they are interested in. The Wirtschaftstour Wien is having something very similar, which I recently engaged with. They also do this. So this is something where you can address really younger people. But then also at some point when this entire generative AI topic came up, and it was pretty obvious from the beginning that women's job or jobs where predominantly women are working at will be heavier impacted by this technology. I started giving workshops, especially in women networks, to give them some practice to work with this technology, because at the end of the day, this technology, large language models, ChatGPT, will not replace individual people, but using it will make you much more efficient and productive. And the person leveraging this technology will then replace a person not looking at it and trying to avoid it. So the idea about this workshop was to reach people literally from anywhere. And it was a former work colleague and his wife and me doing these workshops together. And we did it, for example, networks called Women Who Code in Barcelona or Sisters of Code in Cambodia, where we would just online collectively gather together, talk a little bit, how did this all come up, and then open our browsers and start really playing with this technology, trying out some prompts and giving ideas or inspiration how to professionally or privately use it in your life.
I see that it's very important to you to make sure that women succeed. And also, I think you're working very hard to bring women into this field, which is still very male dominated at this point. And this brings me to your specific career. You are now a data scientist, and you're obviously happy with the switch you made from drilling engineer to data science, because if you weren't, you obviously wouldn't be trying to get women to do the same thing. Tell me a little bit about what is so fascinating for you about data science, and tell me a little bit about your career progression, what it was like, what it's like working at Frequent, what your plans are, maybe. So what are you aspiring to do?
What I really like about this topic is that it is extremely hot topic. So everybody talks about it. And that means you also can read lots of stuff about it. Like in my old profession, we were using in our studies, for example, books partially from the 60s. So it was not happening at such progress was not happening at such a rapid pace. And now in this field, things are changing fast, and you can read tons of articles and new stuff in the news daily. And I really like that, because it's so exciting, because then it really pops up. OpenAI did this, or Google published a paper about this technology, and it's like watching a TV series. Every time something new pops up, and then you're trying to open whatever new technology is there and start playing around. And also it feels extremely empowering to have the tools to help companies take decisions, because in the older days, decisions were taken from experience of people sitting on their desks for many years and saying, oh yeah, I know how this is going to work out. And now that you don't need years of experience, you just need some skills and common sense. And then you can analyze data that will help you prepare something, some insights for a company to take decisions. And that feels really empowering, because it doesn't matter your background, it doesn't matter your age or your gender. If you have this skill set, people will listen to you. At least that is my perception.
So you feel that data science, or at least this kind of predictive data science will be important for every company going forward that wants to succeed in the future?
Yeah. The thing is, we hear so many different terms. We hear we hear data science, and then you also mentioned about predict analytics. And it all comes to that point where you take decisions based on data. And data science or AI as well, they give you tools to do that. And maybe as an example, if you look at data, there are different levels of what you can do. Either you can look at the data as they are, and based on that say, this is the current condition. But you can also look at that data and say, assuming something went wrong, we can say, based on the data, this is why something went wrong. So we can look what was happening before that event or incident, and we can explain why things happen. But at the same time, we can infer or predict what will happen in the future. So we can do different levels of complexity on this data, and then have a very nice toolbox basically for companies to take their decisions. And that is really going to be the future, because you need to base your decisions on something, right? And I think this is really the way to go. So you've probably heard this crap in, crap out story. And lots of companies, they oversee their duty to take care of a proper data management before even thinking about AI. Companies should really try now to make sure that their data are in a reasonable shape, because data are everywhere, but there was never really someone taking proper care of them. And in order to give reasonable output, the data need to be in a good quality condition.
Thank you for that, Jacqueline, because I think it's very important to explain what you actually do. Because I think most people, we know everyone's talking about AI, everybody's talking about data science and large language models and machine learning, but nobody really knows what any of these things mean unless you actually work with it. So thank you for that segue into the background of what you're trying to do with data. And yes, I think that's one of the most important tasks a lot of companies will have going forward, is a proper data hygiene and proper data management. Because for data to be actually useful, there has to be a way to consistently turn it into some form of information. And there's a difference between the two things, data and information. What are your plans going forward? What are you planning to do next? Let me put it this way, because obviously you were a data scientist in progress. Now you're a data scientist at Frequentis. What are your plans?
So my next step is going into a very similar position, but it's just called different. It's called data analyst, which is also analyzing data, and that is going to be in a cyber defense center at the bank. So they have already collected their data, which is about security incidents. And the idea is going to be looking in an AI-assisted way how to look at this big amount of data to get the most important information out of it.
That sounds so interesting. I mean, this is like the marriage of two of my favorite topics, and that's data and security. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important AI will be in the field of security going forward as well. Congratulations. That sounds like something that's going to be a lot of fun. And you said you're doing something similar, but it has a different name. And we're back at what I said earlier. So that there are a lot of words out there: data scientist, data analyst, data engineer, and nobody really knows what the difference is. And it doesn't necessarily matter at this point. What I would like to talk about is, what do you actually need to study, or what skills do you need to do any of these jobs?
In majority of all these programs, you would start with the classical courses like math and statistics. And this might sound a little bit scary, but at the end of the day, these are tools that will allow you to look at the data with, let's call it, some special glasses. By applying certain algorithms or certain or functions on a set of data, you can see things that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And statistic gives you a way to describe the condition of the data. So definitely statistics is going to be one thing, but it's more about understanding really the concepts. Then there is programming, because when you write an algorithm that is going to execute something on your data to give you a prediction, for example. This at the moment is still going to be done in code. However, looking really into the future and the development of generative AI, I think there will be a heavy shift coming in the next years, because while now you are learning a language to translate human and computer, at some point the generative AI will take over that part. So it will be more crucial to understand what is it that you want to do with the data, or what is it that you want to see in the data, and not precisely looking for the syntax to execute this. And then also business acumen is really important. You need to know, why are you even looking after this? It's not about making the model from 89% to 99% accurate. The question should really be, what do I want to solve with this? It's not only playing with the data. At the end of the day, you need to generate some revenue. You want to make some money out of it. So you need to understand the core business of this company. How do they make money? What is the business model? And how does AI fit into this? And surprisingly, I found myself to be really skilled in that role, to translate this techie AI part and the business understanding. Yeah.
I like that you talked about this just now, because there are a lot of people who are afraid of this generative AI development because, and you mentioned this earlier, a lot of jobs will be impacted in some form. A lot of people are afraid that they might lose their positions. And what you just said reinforces what I believe, that certain, what we call soft skills, even though that's a very weird way to put it, but human skills and soft skills will just become more important. Analytical thinking, understanding what you actually want to achieve, business acumen. Those are things that are very much inherent in how people or humans think. And I think if you are worried about the future, these are the things that you should start focusing on, because maybe you will never be the greatest mathematician on earth, but you might be someone who understands a business well, or is able to translate between the different business units, the technical and the business. So I think, even though some things are going to go away and some jobs might actually fall under the bus, I think new opportunities are also opening. And I like that you talked about what you're good at, especially because I think a lot of women are good at this communication and translation and understanding the bigger picture, and then, translating it into something that you need.
Yeah, especially looking into generative. I mean, many companies think, how can I put AI into my product to sell it to someone? But since ChatGPT was released, they also really need to think, how can I use AI inside my organization to make people more productive? And these people are administrative assistants, controllers. They cover all levels of the organization. And what I've seen in my current job is that the majority of these people, they have some doubts about the technology. So one thing, for example, I started to develop was just 5-minute videos to cover the basic terminology and to put this entire concept of AI in a very simplified way, just to have a feeling about what we are talking, and that all these buzzwords suddenly start to make sense for them, so they get a feeling for it. And it was such a rewarding feeling when people on the hallway approached me and said, "Oh, thank you, Jacqueline. Finally, I can also understand all of this complex stuff," because sometimes it feels AI is about PhDs talking to PhDs about super complex algorithms. But now AI is coming into our everyday lives in all levels, and we need to prepare the people to get ready for that. So there is a lot of human and social work and empathy needed to also onboard these people with the topic.
Yeah, such a good point. I recently had a talk at the X Square Summit, and it was about, AI and society and the workplace. And this is one of the things I said. We have to make sure that we educate people. And this is what you're doing. And this brings me back to something I said earlier about you. You always take on the responsibility of doing these things when no one else does it. And I think that makes you exceptional in a way that will actually accelerate your career beyond what other people achieve, because you actually think about what is necessary for others to be successful, which is a rare gift. So thank you for doing that, Jacqueline.
Oh, thanks. And
So
honestly,
yeah,
it also gets seen and appreciated by all the people around. So because the people who are benefiting directly from it are super happy, and also the business people are thankful, because even if they understand technology, sometimes they just cannot catch all the people. So it is rewarding to be in this position, and it feels good.
I wonder, because you are one of those people who switched careers, and I read this book about generalists being more successful. Do you feel that it helps you that you have this kind of outsider perspective on the whole thing? Do you feel that changes the way you approach things?
Definitely. And not only the outsider in terms of, but
Mm,
your entire life story makes you to some extent an outsider, because you will have that unique way of looking at things that others don't
mm,
have. May it be that you are a parent, may it be that you have to look after your parents, do some care
mhm,
work, or you've worked with people with disabilities, whatever you're
mhm,
doing in whichever context will put a special, like, glasses on your face. Nobody else has that, and you bring that unique thing into the company, so they should be very, very helpful and have a really open mindset about inclusiveness and diversity in the workplace. So career changer is like something that makes you unique.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you touched on the most important part, that we need more diversity in tech because it will impact everyone. And we need more people with different glasses looking at what we're doing and what we're developing to make sure that it works for everyone and that the solutions we create are more creative. So it's been really interesting to see how the last 18 months, I think it is about 18, 19 months since we last talked, have been. There's been such a big change in your life, and I'm so glad everything worked out. And congratulations once more on the new job that you're about to set out on. I really look forward to talking to you again in like 1.5 years, maybe, and see what happens next. And I'm sure our listeners will be too. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for doing this Where Are They Now episode with me. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always great to be on your podcast. Anytime, I will do that again.